All right, we are going to talk about classroom management, and it is one of my favorite conversations to have because it's the one thing no one ever actually explained to us. And it's the reason so many teachers feel like they're failing when they're not. If you've ever left your classroom thinking, why aren't they listening? Or why doesn't anything I try ever work? Or why does this feel so much harder than it should? I want you to hear this. And I'm going to write it up on my iPad right here, right now, so that this sticks with you. It's not you. It is not your fault. You are handed, most teachers go in there, you're piecing together this, all of these things and tricks, tips and tricks from everywhere, from PDs, from social media, from colleagues. You're trying to figure out how to manage a classroom. And when it doesn't work, we start assuming that we are the problem. And here is the truth that nobody says out loud, but it should be shouted to the rooftops. You were handed keys. You were handed a classroom. You were never handed a roadmap. So keys does not mean you're going to get it all right. Keys without a roadmap is a disaster. And classroom management, we walk around talking like everyone knows what it means. But there is no shared definition. There's actually no dictionary definition. There's nothing we were truly ever oriented to into the world of teaching. So teachers are guessing and blaming themselves when guessing doesn't work. When there is no shared definition, excuse my writing, when there is no shared definition, that equals guessing because everybody has their version of what classroom management is. When I started teaching, I was excited. I was ready. I was so pumped. And I got the same message that most teachers get. You're certified, you're graduated, you've got this, good luck, you can do this. And I'm just adjusting my screen. And the reality of this is that I knew theory. I knew, development. I learned about development of children. I knew how to write a lesson plan really, really well. That anticipatory set, if you know, it actually is awesome. But I did not know what to do when a student refused or when chaos broke out in my classroom or if when the same behaviors, they just kept happening. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? I cried, and I cried a lot. I carried a lot of their weight on my shoulders, and I felt like a total failure. Looking back, I was not failing. I was never taught what classroom management actually is. I'm going to get back into my iPad here. And theory, the thing is like school is great. I loved school. I did learn a lot. But theory does not equal reality of teaching. That's just fact. There is no ifs, ands, buts about it. So I'm going to be very honest here, and I don't want to scare you or anything if I'm not already. I don't want to scare you, but I need to be real with you. Classroom management shapes your year. It shapes your entire career. It shapes whether teaching feels sustainable. It shapes whether you enjoy this job or whether you survive this job. not because you're weak, but because it's the thing that everything else sits upon. If I were to draw a triangle here, and you've all seen all the triangles of hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Teacher joy, effective teaching, student behaviors, sustainability. This all sits upon classroom management. It is the foundation to everything else inside of a classroom and inside of your teaching career. Management is how to run a room. Okay? That's what management is. What's been taught? Most of us have been taught that classroom management means rules first, expectations, consequences, and then it should just work. Everything should just fall into place. But that version assumes that students are compliant. It assumes predictability. We know what's happening. It assumes control equals success. And in today's classrooms, that falls apart. It does not work. Advice does not equal orientation. That's why teachers are exhausted. Right here. That's why teachers feel exhausted. That's why behavior feels personal. That's why effort doesn't equal calm. It does not equal calm. Here's the shift that changes everything. Classroom management isn't about being stricter. It's not about being louder. And it's not a personality trait. It's about clarity, about what actually creates predictability in a classroom. Let me write this a little more simply here. Predictability equals calm. When there's clarity, that's when we stop spinning. We stop second guessing, and behavior stops feeling like a personal attack because it finally makes sense. After 23 years in the classroom, I realized something important. Everything that makes a classroom feel calm or chaotic falls into just a few categories. And they're key. These are key indicators and few key areas. I did not figure this out right away. In fact, I burned out hard year 10. I was exhausted, disconnected, and quietly planning my exit. And I actually started a side business selling clothing because I thought I was needed a way out of teaching because I didn't think I could sustain it. What I didn't expect, was that the world I stepped into outside of teaching would change everything. And through that work, I was introduced to books and thought leaders and ideas around leadership, systems, brain science, personal growth. I remember thinking, why hasn't every teacher been taught this? Why have I never been taught this before? How come I don't know this? Why don't I know this? And why haven't we ever, every teacher needs to know this. So I started bringing those things into my classroom and I started implementing them in my classroom. And then everything shifted. Got a little bit of sniffles. Teaching, it stopped feeling heavy. Student behavior started to make sense. My classroom ran with more ease. And my students thrived. And so did I. For the first time, I loved teaching again. And that's when I realized something really, really important. That this wasn't about trying harder. It wasn't about being better. It was about understanding how classrooms actually work. And realizing that most teachers are not given that clarity. I'm not teaching all of that here right now. I just want to name what has been missing. So here are the 3 things that are missing. One is teacher power. Second is student behavior. Third is classroom systems. When even one of these things isn't clear, teachers end up blaming themselves. But what's really missing is the understanding, not the effort, not the love, not the care. It's the understanding. And this is exactly why I created the roadmap. Not because teachers need more to do, not because teachers aren't trying hard enough, but because I was sick of watching good teachers run around feeling like they were the problem when no one ever explained the structure of classroom management in the first place. Inside the roadmap, I walk through this step by step in the right order so that teachers don't have to guess and pick and choose and piece together things anymore. If you want this explained clearly in writing without overwhelm, I put it into a short free guide. It's called The Classroom Management Lie That Keeps New Teachers Exhausted. It helps you see why advice hasn't worked and why the next tip, trick, and Pinterest board does not help and why that's not your fault. If this made something click, that matters. That it's not because you suddenly got better with something, but because someone finally named what has been missing. So you don't need to be tougher. You have to give yourself grace. You don't need more random strategies. You need clarity. And I'm really glad you're here.